War for the Planet of the Apes is probably the most evolved performance capture that is seen to date. But when I think back to Lord of the Rings and where it all started, there's been such a huge journey in terms of the evolution of the technology, the hardware, the cameras, the software, everything that goes into transforming an actor's performance into an avatar character. Motion capture came out of the medical industry, but then it was used in early video games. So that would be by using a suit with retro-reflective markers placed at joints in the body, the information of which is then piped into a computer that provides then an electronic skeleton, which is then added to an animated rig. So the process of shooting on Lord of the Rings was to go on set and work with the other actors on location. Then we'd have to do a second pass with the camera. I would stand off to the side and then they would react to a ball on a stick and they would then capture their performances. Then I would go back to a motion capture studio where I'd climb into the motion capture suit. They would play back the scenes that I'd been working on and I would be able to see on the screen in real time a representation of Gollum. So if I lifted up my right hand, Gollum's arm would raise. And if I twisted my body, it would totally move in sync with my movements. It was in effect being like a puppeteer and marionette at the same time. The next film that I worked on was King Kong. The difference this time round was that it made the transition from motion capture to performance capture because I was wearing 132 retro-reflective markers on my face, which were assigned to muscle groups that would then directly drive the digital mask of King Kong, all of which were picked up by a bank of cameras, only 180-degree field, so I couldn't turn my back. The basis of the character design, the actor sees from a very early point, so you see, I knew that his facial design was going to accentuate some of my own facial structure. So this is where we get the transition to what we call performance capture. It's capturing audio, facial and body all at the same time. The task in post-production is always going to be that ability to take the actor's performance and actually interpolate that performance whilst retaining it but also putting it onto the physiognomy of an ape. So it's almost like looking at a costume that you're going to put on and choose as an actor, and you find a relationship between yourself and the avatar. Then the next significant change was Tintin. And this was when we started to introduce head-mounted cameras. So this allowed the actor to be shot in 360 degrees. It meant that you were untethered and therefore could move about and play your part very naturally. The next significant change was taking everything out of the motion capture studio and being able to shoot on location, and this happened with the rise of the Planet of the Apes. So this was the first time that we had this real synergy and ability to create the scene once in camera, both using traditional film cameras but also motion capture cameras and boom mounted cameras for facial expressions. Now this was still interiors. This was for instance in Rise for the Planet of the Apes, it was the house that Caesar was brought up in, and they also built a section of San Francisco Bridge for the climactic end sequence where there were upwards of I think 200 motion capture cameras placed all along a stretch of purpose-built set. The next jump forward was then taking and making all these suits much more robust, and by going outside we needed to have a slightly different approach to the markers. They were no longer retro-reflective but actually sent out an infrared pulse, so that it meant that we could shoot outdoors in bright light. Dawn took it a stage further by taking it into much more, shall we say, challenging environments such as the Vancouver rainforests, and when we were shooting in New Orleans we were in 100% humidity and the technology had to stand up to all of that. And that again was taken to a further extreme in War for the Planet of the Apes when we were shooting in minus conditions, night shoots, up to our waist in snow. All of this technology had been built to the point where it was incredibly robust now. As well as rendering and the texturing, the fur, the eyes, the hair, the water, the ability to have snow or rain on fur, all of this technology had been evolving so that the simulations were all becoming much more photoreal. So many people think studying the role for Caesar, for instance, is purely about copying ape movements. And to put everybody straight on that, that is really sort of room 101. That's where you begin. After a while, you realise that it's not just about mimicking behaviour. This is about creating a character. So there are all these psychological and emotional journeys that one has to import into the character. So it's not just about the physical build of the character, but the whole internalisation. And that's why the misconception that performance capture acting is a sort of genre or type of acting is completely wrong. It's no different to any process that you go through to create a role, whether you're on stage, in front of a screen in the more conventional sense. The actor's performance is the actor's performance.